10. And hopefully, some others will join us, but if not, they'll have this recording later that they can listen to. And Estacio, as another chaplain, if you have things to share, please feel free to speak up. So this is kind of Chaplain 101. What I've discovered, and in talking to the other chaplains, it seemed to be pretty broad, as well as with our nurses on our teams, that a lot of people didn't really know what a chaplain does. I think some of our older people have the image of Father Mulcahy on Mass, but some of our younger people don't have any idea at all what a chaplain is or does. And they sort of think maybe it's just a church volunteer, and they don't realize that in our setting that chaplains are professionals, that we have a high level of education. On our team with New England Hospice, we're fortunate that all of our chaplains have at least a master's degree, and several of them actually have doctoral degrees that teach them how to be better chaplains. But in addition to the academic education, chaplains are required to do what's called clinical pastoral education, which is an on-site, often in a hospital, sometimes in a hospice, sometimes in a prison setting, a internship. Usually, in order to be a credentialed chaplain, you have to have at least 4 of those internships, which are 400 hours apiece. So most of us have 1,200 hours of internship, not to mention the years that we have behind us of experience, both in a congregational setting and in hospitals and hospice, as well as other places, needing to be pastoral. My children tease me and say, I'll find the one person in the grocery line who needs a chaplain. Wherever I go, somehow chaplain seems to be written all over my body. And I think that's a real thing. And one of the reasons I say that is that what chaplains are taught early in their training is that every other professional who comes into a patient's room comes in with an agenda or a task. And the chaplain's job is to meet the patient where they are. So unlike nurses, we're not going to give medication. We're not, poking and prodding and taking blood pressures. We're not like an aide where we're going to come in and turn someone. We're not like a social worker who's going to get a family history. We come in specifically to be present with the patient. And the 2 greatest tools that a chaplain has are a ministry of presence, which simply means to physically be in the space with the patient. Calm, open, welcoming to whatever that patient needs and brings in that moment. And silence. And that may sound crazy, but if you think about an elderly patient and their processing, it's often a little slower. And we often find, I'm sure everybody's seen it, you have a patient who speaks slowly and they pause, and the natural human response is to jump in and either fill in the words or to try and get that going somewhere. But the chaplain's job is to provide silence, to make sure that the patient has the time, they need to say what they want to say, to explore what they want to explore. And it's kind of an amazing piece because if you think about it, the chaplain comes into every patient's room without an agenda and allows the patient to drive the interaction. Now, a nurse can't do that. They've got to meet metrics. Chaplains have an amazing opportunity. And our job is not to be any one religion. We are there for the people who are spiritual, for the people who are members of any particular faith. Our job is to help them find whatever tools they need to enhance their spiritual life at that time. So if we have a Catholic patient, it's our responsibility to arrange for things like the sacrament of the sick, or if they're able to continue to have communion. But for many other patients, there are many other things. This year, we found that one of our nursing homes had no one to provide ashes on Ash Wednesday. And as a chaplain, I was able to go into that facility and provide ashes to all the Catholic and Protestant patients. There's a number of other things like that. We can provide communion to any Protestant patients. But more importantly, we can help patients explore. Recently, I had a patient who told me the first several months that I met with them that they were not religious. And so one day I asked him, "What does that mean to you?" And he said, "Well, I believe in God. I just don't go to church." And we ended up having this amazing conversation. But the challenge is to give people that space to tell us what it means to them. I have another patient right now who says she's not religious, but she loves nature. And she loves to just sit and listen to the birds outside her window. Well, the birds are part of God's creation. So isn't listening to the birds a spiritual act? You know, each person is a sacred being, and so their story is sacred. And whatever they want to bring, whatever they're struggling with, and we do get people who have deep theological struggles, people who feel they've gone to church and they've done everything right, and here they are on their deathbed. And why has God done this to them? And we help them to figure out their relationship with their God, whatever the divine is to them. And it's not our job to answer those questions. It's our job to help them explore their relationship with God and their own life and how they find and make meaning from their life, from their experience. And I've had times where patients feel that obviously God is doing some harm to them. And we have to talk about where that message came from. Where does that harmful God come from? Because for most people in today's modern world, God is a source of love and redemption. And so when people still have messages of an angry and harmful God, it often comes from a church history that had not served them well. And so our job is to help them make peace with their own faith and to allow them to be present. Really, we're trained to specifically allow the patient to lead the conversation. We open doors, we ask questions, we answer if we're asked, but we don't provide the framework. So having said that, we have at our disposal a huge number of tools, the ones everybody thinks we have. We can read scripture, we can pray with patients, we can play music on our phones or our iPads, or if you're a singer, we can sing. Those are some of the ones people assume, but we can also do guided imagery. We can help people to use other tools of meditation and self-reflection, self-exploration. One of the tools that I love is one that someone taught me about a number of years ago, which is called praying in color. And it's one where you take markers, and I usually use a paper plate because it's a nice contained environment, and you start to write a name, and you write the name however you want to write it. And then as you're praying in color. So whether it's a drawing or a doodle or an elaboration of the name, it's a spiritual practice of reflection. And so there's all of these kinds of tools. I always say, some of us need to be able to empty. And sometimes that means punching a pillow. And that's a tool. Some of us take a crayon like a 4-year-old and we color the paper until the entire paper is colored red because we're angry at the divine and the holy for what has come to us in our lives. And before we can do any of the healing work to be at peace at the end of our lives, we've got to get the anger out. So there's all kinds of tools, and each one of us as a chaplain comes from a different faith tradition, a different path to chaplaincy and ministry. And so we bring with us all different tools. I know that, Bernard is a singer, and so he can bring music in a way that I can't. But I have a background in visual art, so I can bring creativity and making things with clay and feeling into an encounter with someone. But we can all take people on journeys in their own mind, in their memory. One of my favorites is to encourage people, particularly people with dementia, to envision a favorite place. And oftentimes that favorite place is a place they were as a child. And they can tell me about that place and why it was so meaningful to them. And taking people on those journeys, those personal journeys, is a huge part of chaplaincy because it lets them understand where their wounds come from. And it lets us understand where some of those wounds come from as well. We know that trauma is a huge piece of what happens in human lives, and it affects how we process and come to peace at the end of our lives. I often say to people, when someone is being born, people talk about names for months ahead of time. They take prenatal vitamins. They get excited about telling their families. In hospice, our job is to help people do all those same things at the other end of life. So we're about finding the peace, finding the joy, finding the love and embracing all of what has happened. So we're prepared for that next step of our own personal human journeys, because as living beings, we all need to go on to the next step. And so ours is that one role in the company that has no real structure to our visits. You know, we don't come in and take a blood pressure every time or a temperature. We come in and wait to see what the patient wants us to do. But we're not here just for the patients. And I think that's a critical piece about hospice, is hospice chaplaincy in particular. We're here for the families. We're here for the facility staff. And we're here for all of our coworkers and our team members in hospice. Because this is hard work and it is spiritual work. And most of us have come into hospice because we've had losses of our own. And so the work we do raises those feelings, those losses. And sometimes it's just a gentle nudge of remembrance. But every once in a while, we get that patient whose prognosis or diagnosis or life situation reminds us of somebody we lost very closely. And your chaplain is here to help you through that, because we can't do our work and we can't do it well if we can't keep going and make it through. I always say grief is a journey and we don't want to go on this journey, but that if we don't, those feelings get stifled and stuffed and they'll come out in other ways. So we need to do the processing work of grief. And it's only if we allow ourselves to actually do that work that we come out on the other side stronger. For myself, in some of that work, I've always said that the people I have lost in my life are the people who inspire me to do hospice, because I want to give back to others some of what I received in losing my loved ones, and also some of the joy that they gave me in life. And so I want to be able to transfer some of that. And how we do that is with our support, letting people tell their stories. Some people have long stories that they need to tell. And chaplains have the time to listen to those stories, which is a powerful thing. And we have the opportunity in our team meetings to listen to the social workers and the nurses and kind of connect the dots in ways that other people may not have the opportunity to do. So I'm going to see if any of the other chaplains want to chime in. I'm giving you a lot right now. We are all about collaboration. We do have 3 other chaplains on the line right now. We have Estacio, Bernard, and Ginger. And let me see, does anybody want to step in? Anyone want to add to what I've already?
Everyone is muted, so if you can unmute
Yes,
yourself.
Julian, I would like to add, thank you very much for your presentation. It was awesome. One of the things we can also work is, as patients are declining, is working their stress towards something, like some past relationships. I know you spoke about it, but sometimes there is someone to forgive or to receive forgiveness. And embracing this is an important part of the healing, with the ultimate goal of making this transition to the next life or next existence. So we do this, and it differs a lot psychotherapy because it's more pastoral emphasis and aiming the life that it's ahead. So one of the things we do is helping patients with their relationships and connecting, helping the families I'm not going to say to accept, but to little by little to understand what is the end of life in a spiritual uh, matter, in a spiritual view of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Estacio. That's really helpful. I think along with that, one of the things that, I'll just tell you a little story. So when my brother was on hospice and dying about 9 years ago now, one of the things that was really interesting. So my brother was religiously educated and diverse person. He had a background in Quakerism and Buddhism and Judaism and had served different congregations. And when it came to the end of his life, and I'm sure you've all encountered this, that there are patients who for one reason or another believe that accepting hospice is similar to committing suicide. It's a giving up. And honestly, as educated as my brother was, I was really surprised that he had that viewpoint. And even more strangely, what my brother needed was a conversation with a Catholic priest. And he complained upside down and backwards that the social worker had asked the priest to come, but they had a really great conversation. And at the end of it, I asked him, so what did you learn? And he said, well, if the Catholics think hospice is okay, and they're one of the strictest religions about things like that, then it's okay. So, probably in my normal life, that would never have occurred to me. It was kind of a backdoor into his spirituality. And that's what we chaplains sometimes have to do, is remember that it may have been something someone heard in childhood. It may be something that they're holding on to from somewhere else in their life. As Estacio said, making that peace, making closure. That's what we're about, is helping people so that when their final moments come, they can relax because they don't have burdens weighing on them. Ginger or Bernard, did you want to say anything? Nope.
Hello.
Hi.
Good evening. Wonderful presentation. I'm driving, but I just thought what you shared was great. And I thank you so much for sharing such a broad prospect of what we bring to the table. And I enjoyed it very much. So just thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Ginger?
I finally figured out how to speak into it. I am so sorry I was late, Julianne, and I am going to go back and listen to the recording. Thank you. What I heard was very informative and I thought apropos. So thank you so much.
You are very welcome. I don't know if the rest of you know this, but this is Holy Week for some of us. And for our pastor people, it's a very busy week. So I know Bill was supposed to be with us as well, except he both has COVID and it's Holy Week. So timing wise, in the Christian church, Holy Week is one of the holiest weeks of the year leading up to Easter. And for our Jewish family and friends, it is Passover beginning tomorrow. And that is also in a very important spiritual and religious time. And one of the things that we as chaplains also have the ability to do is help our patients to honor rituals and traditions in their own faith tradition and help them to find what they need to do that. There are a lot of online tools in today's world that we can use. When I was working in the hospital, I discovered that there's an app that you can have access to calls to worship in the Islamic tradition every day at the proper times. And so, you know, within every tradition, we have access to a great many of these things. You'll probably see in many of our churches this Sunday in particular, almost every one of our congregations and our patients will have access to Mass in the Catholic tradition for Easter Sunday on television. Many of the facilities have Catholic channels. So there's lots of tools that we have. And then I'm going to just ask all of you if you have any other questions that you would like answered.
I don't have any
Okay.
question, but I do think this was super educational. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. It's very helpful.
Oh, you're very welcome. And, you know, one of the things I say all the times to our nurses is, you know, when they're running around, especially at end of life, we can just sit with a patient and that's okay. And we can sit and pray in silence or meditate. And that sort of thing. So, you know, we're happy to be with patients at end of life. All right. And Greg just said he doesn't have a mic, but thank you. So thank you, Greg.
Thank you,
Sarah?
Julianne. I can't think of any questions at the moment, but if I do have any, I'll probably either send you an email or something like that.
Okay. Well, and also, you know, one of my real hopes with this is that it opens a dialogue with your chaplain. So feel free to ask us, you know, tell us situations and see if there's something we can bring to it. You know, and if I can't, but I may think Bernard can, or Estacio may have a gift, you know, because we do represent different faith traditions, we all have different experiences and went to all different schools for our training and different places for our preparation. We bring lots of different gifts and wide experiences with us. And different experiences both in chaplaincy and in congregational life. So, all right. Well, thank you for coming. I'm thrilled that you showed up. And I hope you all have a wonderful Easter.
Thank you. We'll be posting this on our YouTube page, New England Hospice Husband's YouTube page, so you can find it there.
Fantastic. And if you are someone who celebrates Passover, enjoy that as well. I know our Islamic friends have just finished their holy month of Ramadan, so they're enjoying what is called iftar after, which is the breaking of the fast, and some indulge for several days. So we'll welcome them with love to their celebrations. All right. Well, thank